I am Sunny, Sunlight's community manager and a Sunlight mom of two. And joining me today is Kristi Clover. Kristi, please tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. I'm super excited. And about me, well, I'm a homeschool mom of 5, and we have recently graduated our oldest. So the experiment worked. So it's super exciting. Yes. And goodness, we have been homeschooling. I was trying to do the math the other day, but I'm like, do you count preschool or not? So since my oldest 2 were in kindergarten and first grade, we have been doing this homeschool journey. So we now have, our oldest has finished his AA in college. He went to a junior college. Then next up, I've got a senior in high school. And then I have a junior higher and 2 in elementary. So right now we are homeschooling everything.
You got the whole gamut. Yeah.
I know. I just don't have toddlers in the house anymore, but did plenty of homeschooling during those days. So I have a lot to share about that. But yeah, so that's a lot about me. I'm online, with encouragement. So I love encouraging homeschool families. I speak at a lot of the national conventions. I'm an author. So I'm the author of M.O.M, Master Organizer of Mayhem, over my shoulder, and as well as Homeschool Basics, which I co-authored with Trisha Goyer. So it's just been a lot of fun just through the years getting to figure out this homeschool thing.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, you've already kind of touched on it. Your book, M.O.M, Master Organizer of Mayhem, which makes you the organization expert. I've also read the book and loved it, so I'm really excited. And then, of course, you're a homeschool mom. So we're going to talk about how you can utilize your general home organization tools and tricks, not just in your home, but in your homeschool life, because oftentimes that adds a whole new layer of dimension to what you need to get organized. So, Kristi, your book title, M.O.M, references the fact that moms find themselves needing more and more systems and ways to organize as they have children. But in reading it, I really think your solutions would be helpful for anyone, no matter how many kids they have, or how big or small the space they live in is. And of course, right now in January, organization is super helpful for homeschool families, because we have many of them either starting out a brand new school year, or they're smack in the middle of one and trying to stay motivated after the holidays. So you speak of creating the atmosphere you want in your home while also letting go of perfection. Why is this so important? And where should someone start if they're feeling overwhelmed?
Well, that's what's really important is I think I always say, like, we are taught to share. We need to share the grace that the Lord has given to us with our children. So that counts for in your homeschool, in your home, just in life in general, because, the world is going to throw a lot at us. We have so many things buzzing around. And oftentimes when it comes to organization, both in homeschooling and home, it's overwhelming because it's like, well, where do I even start? So I like to encourage people to kind of figure out, what is the most overwhelming thing? And sometimes that's a big project. So you can either take on that project and break it down, or just pick one small thing to kind of start conquering. But right now in our homeschool, January hits. And when I start cleaning up Christmas, it's funny because I'm like, well, this decoration was on this cabinet, I'll clean out the cabinet, so just as I'm putting things away, I'm starting to kind of dig a little deeper. But today was the kickoff to our new year at the time that we're recording this. And so we were doing some cleaning up. So the little behind the scenes piece is that we not only, yes, we got COVID, but we had COVID, the flu, strep throat, hand, foot, and mouth, and all of us had colds and sinus infections. So it was just like, it's been a really fun time, but needless to say, we got really behind. And so I gave my kids a ton of grace, and I just kind of rebooted, reestablished, reset, however you want to say it, whatever little I redid our homeschool organization this morning, and just making sure that I cut some things out that we're not going to do. And I kind of just, put things back in order, and it helps everyone to feel more calm, because going into the new year, feeling behind is overwhelming in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you mentioned the flexibility, and, it doesn't have to be whatever you first planned. Sometimes life throws those curveballs at you. And when people have been sick and you have the holidays and things like that, you might need to modify things a little bit. And I love in your book, you mentioned the importance of understanding your why when it comes to organizing, because it's easier to stay motivated that way. And I think that is so true with homeschooling also. When it gets
Yeah.
hard, it's so important to evaluate why you're doing that in the first place. So how do you determine what is important and why in your own homeschool? I know you have kind of a 4-part way of prioritizing in your family that you mentioned, but how can others do that within their family and figuring out what's important to them?
So that's the key, like you're saying, like the why is so important because that's your motivator. If you don't understand why you're homeschooling, it gets really harder on the hard days. If you don't understand the why you're trying to organize a space, then it makes it harder to find the motivation. So it really comes down to a motivational element, but there's also the element of, we have priorities in our life. And so you want to be giving your best to your top priorities. And so in the book, I have the 4 F's. So faith, family, friends, and fellow man. And that's how we kind of try to fit things into those 4 different buckets, I guess you could say. And so making sure that we are making God our number 1 priority in our house. So that is personal quiet times, teaching our kids how to learn about the Bible, how to incorporate that. And in our homeschool, that matters a lot as well, because we try to teach our kids that we learn to read so we can read God's word. We learn to write and to, be able to articulate, the things that God's putting on our hearts, or, to be able to share God's word with other people. And we learn math because God is a God of logic. And I can throw in there as well that we organize our homes because God is a God of order. I mean, look at the way that creation, the days of creation, the way he planned that out. It's so orderly in the way he did it. So that's some of our kind of whys, but you kind of touched on your first question as well that I didn't really hit on. And that one of my whys for our home in general, both homeschools in the home, but I really, my goal in my home is to create a home of peace, of love, and just joy. So whether that's just, sometimes we need to cut things out of our schedule so that we're not overscheduling. And as homeschool families, it's really easy because we have social pressure. Like, am I doing enough? Are they at grade level? All the things. Are they being socialized enough? So we tend to pack our schedule with too many things, especially new homeschool families. I know that you're doing this because you just think, it's not enough. It's not enough, and we put all this pressure on ourselves. And so you have to stop that. And that's why it helps to make a list. And so you can make a list step. You can put all the things that you have to get done, things you'd like to get done, and things that like, hey, if we can pull this off, that'd be great. And then, just kind of figure out like what works for each season. So maybe that's something that you're like, it'd be really fun to do, whether it's a field trip. Is that going to fit in with what we have going on this year? If it doesn't, then move it to the next year. I mean, I think we put pressure on ourselves, like we have to get it done. We have to get it done now. And when we really look big picture, like, I've got my little wall calendar over there. It's blank right now, but it does really help to kind of move things around and see, I'm cramming way too many things into January, like high hopes to get things done and start, new traditions in our homeschool and in our home. But at the same time, you have to be realistic. And so it helps to get a big picture and to start prioritizing, like, these are the important things that we have to find time in our schedule for. So you put those in first, and then you start putting in all the other elements as well. But it really does help, you to understand that I'm putting this in because this is my priority. It's my why. And then we're putting this off because it's not fitting with that priority. So there's a lot of different ways and different methods to do it, but that's kind of what we tend to do in our home.
I love that. Yeah. And you say that a clean and organized space is a happy place. And I know this is so true for me. If there is visual clutter, it stresses me out. But I'm the only naturally neat person in my own house. So what do I do about all the moving parts, i.e. my family members who live here? And what is the best way to find common ground where we don't drive each other crazy, where I'm not nagging them to pick things up, but they are not leaving things everywhere?
Well, what I have found is that when I do take time to really make a space, like this is my space. So this is my happy place. So I can make it feel and look the way I want it to. But like I was a mom of boys only for a long time. So my 3 oldest are boys, my 2 youngest are girls. And, so I think like a girl, I'm a girl. So like I know how to make a place look pretty. And when it's pretty, then they seem to be more apt to try to keep it tidy. But for boys, I kind of had to be like, okay, how can I make this fun and cool? And so not to, like peg people because everyone's different, but I do really feel like when you give spaces, kind of a feel, so that is going to be targeted towards them. And again, that doesn't help when it's like in your kitchen, like, let's keep the counters clear. Let's pick our clothes up. It is hard. So that's where you need systems for those things. But when you are cleaning a space, I mean, everybody will, I mean, even your messiest people in the house, they're going to feel that. They're going to feel just the relief, because it really does. People don't understand that when you have a lot going on, like when we took the Christmas tree down, it's always like, whoa, like, look at all the space in this room. It was amazing. And so whenever I'm cleaning or organizing, I try to stage it. And that sounds silly, but kind of like when you walk into a model home, or when you, looking at, now it's all Pinterest or blogs, like those areas are staged. Like this area is staged. Nothing's moving back here. Maybe things get a little cluttered right there before they get filed, but it's really important to stage things, because the more so like when I go to bed, I mean, it doesn't happen every night, but I find that if I stage the house, like, so we're all working together, tidying up in the evening. And then I'll kind of like, I'm the one that's usually going in and like putting the pillows where I need them and just doing the little tiny tweaks. And again, I don't do it every night, but I try to do it as much as I can, because I wake up in the morning feeling like, but getting people to work together, because you kind of had multi-layers to that question. Yeah. So staging helps, because you're making the place. And again, one of the things with staging is that you're also imprinting a memory of what the place is supposed to look like. So when they know what it looks like, then that was really helpful. So it kind of creates a picture in their brain, and you can take an actual picture if you guys are trying to work on like, this is how like our counter should look. Look how clear it is. So that's really nice. But as far as motivating people in your home, to help out when you're the only neat person, it is hard. And then you have to help them to understand the why. And even it's just like, because you want a sane mom. We need this for you guys to enjoy me more. And, it's not fun to have to nag. And so that's where you there's so many different systems. So you can have checklists, you can just have times of the day where a timer goes off, and you can make it fun by, for 15 minutes, I'm going to set the timer. We're going to crank up the music, and we are just going to clear out this room. And I'm usually involved in the process, because oftentimes we have an expectation for our kids, like, clean the room. And they're like, what does that mean? Like, go make your bed. Okay. We take for granted, we know so much. And so like, what does that mean? Well, let's put the toys away. So maybe it's like breaking things down for kids and making them bite-sized. So making the bed, let me help you and show you how this works. And honestly, you might need to like figure out different, I find like, back up a little. So like when you have the right tools and you make things fun for kids, it's less of a chore. So even down to like using the example of making a bed, seriously, like pull the comforter up, put a pillow on, and that can be that easy. If your kids can't even handle that, maybe there's products like Betty's. I have been like oogling and ogling over Betty's. Like this bed product where like literally you zip it and unzip it. I'm like, amen. Like that would be amazing. So, finding different things and breaking them down, because when a place feels to you overwhelming, you're going to come at it with overwhelm, and your kids are going to feel overwhelmed. And so nothing about that is fun. And so when you break it down, like, hey, let's just see if we can get all the counters as clear as possible without putting it on the floor. Because I've had that happen. We can clear the counters.
Move it over here.
Or my favorite is like, I have to remember where I last saw something and look up, and it's gone into that cabinet. That's dangerous. I'm like, don't stuff things. Like everything has a home, so helping your kids to understand that things have homes. And if they don't, then let's figure out a good home for that, and getting them involved in it. So it's kind of a multi-layered answer to that, but hopefully that helps.
No, I love that. You kind of touched on some of the systems that you have for tackling home organization. So I would love to dive into your systems and discuss how to use them in your homeschooling specifically, because of course, with homeschooling, you're bringing a lot more products into your house and, you know, the way of curriculum and things like that than you would normally have.
Yeah.
So decluttering, I know, is listed as your first system, and it's oftentimes the most important yet most hated part of organizing for sentimental reasons, or just the overwhelm, or whatever it may be. So what is your best way to declutter your homeschool or to keep the clutter from piling up during your school year?
Well, like this was a great example in that we had a natural break. And so breaks are a great time to get in there and clean things up. Oftentimes like things have just kind of like landed. So that's this morning, you know, I was up a little earlier, making sure that I was, you know, just repositioning things because things need, again, to have a home. But decluttering in your homeschool is really important. And summer is a great time for that as well. You can also do mid-year breaks. So maybe, you know, think about doing something in October before you pull out your, you know, you're decorating things for fall, you know, do it right after Christmas or as you're putting Christmas things up. You can do it again, you know, maybe in March, or, you know, so just find different times. You can also do something where you're decluttering weekly. So every Friday, we're going to go through and just get rid of all these papers because we have papers everywhere. So yeah, decluttering is an important element. And so when every state's different as far as record keeping. And so I'm going to speak to just like in our state, I'm in California, believe it or not, we're an easy state to homeschool in. So when it comes to record keeping, I have to keep enough work to show that learning has happened. So oftentimes at those moments when the kids, when you have younger kids, you might want to be a little careful because they're like, wait, but I worked on that. I worked on that paper. And you're like, yeah, we don't need to keep that. Hide it. And I always use a black trash bag when I'm cleaning things out that we don't need. So, you know, we have systems. So I have different systems. So I actually have a homeschool organization course. And I walk through different systems. So one of them is filing work. And so my kids have an inbox. So they know when they're done with work, they put in the inbox. And then like right now, again, it's a decluttering season. So my kids are old enough now, praise the Lord, that they can actually separate out. So like we have an inbox, so we'll have like a stack of work, which is everything. So every subject. So I will start them off. Like I just have space on the floor. I'm like, here's math, here's writing, here's grammar, here, you know, whatever the subjects are. And I lay it out and then they have to take the, you know, the stack and then divide everything up. And then we do have a file system. So usually once they create those stacks, I'm going through and pulling the pieces that are their best work for our record keeping and putting it in the file. And so that eliminates a ton of paper. So that's a great way with homeschooling to declutter. The other thing is that with January, for those starting off your new year, yay, you know, that's awesome. Remember this in like, you know, 4 months, but for those of us who have already started and kicked off our homeschool year, this is a great time to kind of evaluate, like we have not gotten to this extra thing that sounded so fun to do at the beginning of the year. And like, we're going to put that to the side and we are not going to attempt to do that because it's just not coming together. So declutter how much you're doing. And that's a whole different topic on, because I one of the workshops I do at homeschool conventions is stop doing too much. And so I really try to help people to look at what they've planned into their year, because right there, that's going to help you have less stuff. But yeah, like we do try to kind of keep things down. You have to have a system for where your work goes when you're done. And we even have a sunlight system. So we have a system where I have a bookshelf where all of my sunlight books go for each kid. And so like my girls were doing one together. I forget what, I think we're doing B or C. I don't remember. So but whatever we're doing, I keep theirs together and then I keep readers separate. And then we keep that in one bookshelf. And then as they're on a book, then I have a separate place, like their active work. So I'm not keeping a stack of books this big for them to like, these are all the books we have to read this year, because that's overwhelming for kids to look at. So I'm just taking what we need for the week. And usually there's, with sunlight, especially, you have some multiple books that you're reading at different times with the kids. So they kind of have this little it looks so tiny, like this little section of books that they're working on. And when they're done with the book, I have a basket for them to put those in. And that's also, I have this big, like I have this wonderful IKEA unit. And so, it was funny because it had 5 sections and I have 5 kids. And so I giggled because I was like, perfect. And now I'm like, I have an extra section. What do I do with it?
Yeah.
So
because if the space is there, you want to fill it.
Very you don't fill it.
Yeah.
I have some empty baskets on there, I will admit. So it feels good. So I'm like, okay, well, we're done with that. But yeah, so just kind of creating a system. So even with books, having a system for where are they going to get, like the ones to come, the ones you're actively using, and when you're done with the book. And so then it just makes end of year so much easier, because then all of the books that are done are in this basket, and it's all, again, by the levels. So it's not like everybody's throwing all their books in. So last year we had so many books that were sunlight related. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if we had 2 sciences, 2 histories, we've been like insane. So this year we have my son doing all sunlight for history and English. And then my daughters are just doing the read alouds and some of the history. But it's fun to see them kind of come together and reading them, but having that system to like, okay, we're done. So
yeah. And I love that it gives them a visual sign as the year is ending. I know we've always done like, this is this year's shelf with our kids. And so that's how we've done it. But I love that where they can visually see like, I've already done all of this. And that's perfect.
And if you have a shelf, you can set the book down. So if they're all upright, and then as you finish it, you put it down. Because again, visually, it helps kids to understand like, I've completed that. Look at that. One book. Yeah. It's just really exciting. So you can do it with whatever space you have. I didn't want everybody to think you need a huge IKEA.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's something, that we'll talk about in a little bit, is if you don't have the huge IKEA shelf, because I know I love to have my books out, even years we're not doing, so they can come back and read them again. But my tip with that I always tell people is I only buy my sunlight books. Everything else I check out at the library so that then I can send them back. We're still getting to read a lot of great books, but they're not taking up space in my home. So love what you said about that. And then also just be aware of your state guidelines. I know some people live in states where they don't need to keep anything. I'm in Colorado, and we're pretty much like that. We have to do, a standardized test every other year, but we don't have to keep a portfolio or anything. So that is nice. Here, a lot of the paper clutter. So so many great ideas there. And in your book, you talk about a concept of a grace space, so that when somebody shows up at the door, and I know our dining room table is always full of whatever school is happening during the middle of the day. So can you explain, to people that are not familiar with that, what the grace space is and how you might use it if you're in the middle of your homeschool day and you have somebody coming over? What do you do?
So grace space is great for homeschool families. Number one, you should just give yourself grace and just open the door and not worry about it. But most of us like to try. And it depends on like how far into things you are. But a grace space is that space. It's not a junk drawer, because you're going to clean it. So the rule with the gray space is you may use it, but you have to come back to it and fit. Like, so once the guests are gone, you pull your space out or wherever it is, and you put it away properly. So this is like hey, I'm in your neighborhood, I'm going to stop by. It's okay. Like, now what? So gray space for us is I had a basket that I kind of would do a quick like swoosh and put it into the basket. Bins work great for this too. Just having a bin like that's empty and in your closet. And then when people come, you just pull it out, put it in and tuck it away. So we have like an entryway closet that I've done that with. This year, however, I will say that we renovated our kitchen and family room, and we tend to homeschool almost 100% down there with the 3 youngest kids. So I have a drawer that is literally our gray space. It's pretty darn neat and tidy, but I like half of it is like dumping grounds where it's just like pull it off the counter, put it in there. And then like I sort it out and we put it away. Because most of the time it's stuff that I can't forget. Like I need that. And that's why it was on the counter, because I'm a visual person. So I'm like the worst of all. So please know that this was written. I kind of giggle because I'm like, this book was written because like I struggle. Like I am a messy person by nature, but I like things neat and tidy. So I joke in the book that I'm kind of an oxymoron, The gray space is great for homeschooling because sometimes, and that's, you can even like, because let me see the pretty pictures, right? They're like, oh, homeschool room. And it's got like this chalked out, like, anatomy picture of like all these things. And like the world is over here. Like, like all of these spectacular, take a picture. I seriously want to see I want some honesty from some of those people. Like, this is what it looks like when we're done homeschooling. This is what it looks like 3 weeks in. This is what it looks like, like we need that. We need a little honesty. Like, it's not going to be perfect, but I would say that when you are staging your homeschool area, baskets are awesome. Like, that's why we have a basket for where the books go when they're done with them. Cause it's like, I don't want them to feel like, cause the books are going to fall over and there's just a few, but like thinking through, like, how are we going to store our things at a kid easy level? It doesn't have to be like, I like to say, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be tucked away. Like, it needs a home. So make sure that when you're thinking about homes, like, you can have that gray space. But if you have prepared in advance for a quick and easy tidy up, then you have homes that are kind of not even gray space because it's just a home that it doesn't have to be neat and tidy. So that's kind of my technique. Like, I'm not going to come like, my sock drawer looks great depending upon how much time I had, at the time. Sometimes I'm like, they're together, they're there. Other times I'm like, let's stack them fun and maybe I'll color coordinate them because I have extra time, but that's like once a year. So
right.
My socks are never color coordinated. So granted, they're mostly.
And I love that you mentioned that because I always take a photo of my bookshelves like the day before school starts because I'm like, this is the one time all year it will look like this. And then you mentioned like the homeschool space and staging. And so this is my office / homeschool room. But like I said, most of the time my kids are out on the kitchen dining room table because I'm working in here. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, I spent all day in here. So unless we're coming to reference the map or use a dry erase board, we're out there anyway. So I have found that, yes, my messes move around depending on where the kids are versus where I am. And we've touched on, Pinterest. There's always beautiful photos and rooms and bookshelves and all of that. But yeah, right. Yeah, inspiration. But what about people who have very limited storage space? Either they're having to keep their school stuff kind of out in the open, maybe in a living room, dining room, somewhere else. How do you keep things looking nice and not like, it just blew up in a room not designed for that?
Well, I'm going to reference, and I keep mentioning, I'm sorry, but my homeschool organization course is so great for people who do have tight spaces because I have a crate system. And actually you can look, I think it's on Facebook too, but I know on Instagram, I'm mostly on Instagram. On Instagram, you can look up Clover Crate and people are tagged their Clover Crate. I have missionaries, I have road schoolers that use this system because it's literally putting your entire school year into a crate. So condensing everything down, but you always have the other stuff. So it's a matter of how you set your homeschool up for success and how you can use those spaces. So crate's great because you can keep it on the floor and you're only going to it on Monday morning to grab your stuff for the week. And so clipboards are great. We have binders. So they take their school for the week and they stick it into their binder and separate it out Monday through, we tend to do Monday through, we have Monday through Friday, but we tend to do Monday through Thursday for like, we have a field trip, we have this, so we always homeschool 5 days, but it looks different. But yeah, I think that's the misnomer. And it's funny because now I feel like even though we have a room that's supposed to be the school room, it's like where we store our books.
Right.
So you don't need a school room. If you have a table, if you have a couch, I mean, honestly, clipboard, you want the secret to homeschool, clipboards. That is one of the number one homeschool organization, like in small space, tools that you can possibly have. We put our day, some kids will do a week's worth. That's overwhelming for most of my kids. But we'll put our day's work on the clipboard and you can sit on the couch and work on it. You can sit on the floor, you can go outside, you can go upstairs, downstairs. So that's really it. You need an inbox. So you need a place for work to go. So you kind of have to think of it that way. Like, where are the manuals? And you can keep that in one small space. Where's the day's work or the week's work? And then where is it going to go when it's done? And you can really consolidate that. So, I know people that they are in an RV and they homeschool. And so again, you don't need a lot of space. Store anything that you're not currently using away. It doesn't need to be in the house even. So it's not hard to homeschool when you have smaller spaces. In fact, sometimes larger spaces are bad because then you're like, we can spread out. And it does make it harder, but you have to be so intentional when you have limited space to add in homeschooling. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, that is great. And let's talk about chores. In your book, you've mentioned keeping the worker bees busy. And I know in our house, we often refer to chores as the way that everyone can contribute, right? Because, you know, we might provide the roof and the food and things like that, but our kids, of course, can contribute in chores. And I think one of the best things about homeschooling is that you are there and school doesn't take as much time, but of course you're eating all of your meals at home. Maybe you're, you know, creating more messes by having everyone home. So how do you establish a good chore system, you know, in your home that keeps your homeschooling running efficiently, but it's not like, okay, now we need to stop school and clean this up, or, you know, how do you determine what's going to work best in your home?
That's a great question. And whoops, I'm rotating. Our swivel chairs, like I'm spinning. So when you're spinning out of control, no, I'm kidding.
That's perfect. Yeah.
So yeah, with chore systems, I just want to make sure people understand, like I'm big on like gleaning and tweaking. So see what friends are doing, see what online you can find, but don't be afraid to tweak it for not only your family, because you guys are unique, but also for your season and even for your year, because we will have a chore system that I'm like, oh my goodness, the world needs to do this because it's the most brilliant thing. Oh my goodness, like this is awesome. And then like something changes, or like, you know, we've got a new class we're going to, we've got kids that, you know, are working and so they're not home and they get, you know, it's just something's going to throw it off, and then it can be overwhelming and suddenly that system doesn't work. So that's, I think, the most important thing to understand is that be willing to like roll with it. You got to be really flexible even with chore systems. So you can do anything from checklists. You can assign work. So like people just know I am the trash person and the trash is getting filled or is getting full. So you need to take it out. So you can assign jobs by room. You can assign jobs by specific things like trash, towels. We do have, you know, when everybody grabs the hand towels right now, we're not even doing that because everybody is responsible for throwing their hand towels in on their laundry day. You can do there's so many different things. So I try to really break down like what needs to get done. And again, I'm looking at a calendar. So when things are crazy, that's when I kind of go, hold up, we need something to change. So I'm looking at what needs to get done. And then I'm looking at a calendar. So what's the best days? Like we're all gone on Wednesday night. So that's not a good day to, you know, so that's going to be like my crock pot meal and like, you know, forget it. We'll, you know, load the dishwasher. Maybe we do paper plates on that day so we can just toss them in the, so, you know, trying to work through what does your family dynamic and family schedule look like for that season, and assigning things either daily or weekly. Obviously you're not, some families aren't taking the trash out every day. Some families are. I highly recommend picking a time when you run your dishwasher. So consistently you can have the same time each day when someone is emptying it. So that job goes to my girls because they're up first, and that's every single morning and they switch off. And then like, since there's 2 girls in 7 days, Sunday is one of my, my youngest son's day to empty the dishwasher. And then the older, so it's just kind of figuring out what works for you. So that's what's hard. Cause I'm always like, but tell me exactly. We've done this, everything from, we had checkboards. We've done the little Lancet things like, you know, that were really popular for a while. We've done, you know, jars where you're pulling your chores out. We've done big wall checklists. So we've tried so many different systems through the years, but it always comes down to, you have to find the right days to do things. I have a girlfriend who they do Friday home blessing day. And so they don't homeschool on that day. They literally, that is their chore day. And that's when they're all going around and doing their chore day. But finding a time, so finding a time during the day to do things consistently and finding a day consistently to do it. Because the more you create routines, even with chores, so, you know, whether it's chores or homeschool or whatever it is you're trying to tackle, when you create a routine and keep it consistent, it creates a habit and you're not having to think about it all the time. Because especially as moms and dads, like it's overwhelming trying to keep track of all the things going on. So if you have some things that are built in your kids and habits, and even if you have to make a visual reminder, like I will sometimes just get a whiteboard out and be like, these are all the things, and I'll assign kids to it. So I just put it on the counter. I'm like, everybody go check it off and like put a check mark. I'm the only one allowed to erase it. But that's a system that has worked for us. So like, just if I notice things are like really crazy, then mom gets her whiteboard out and everyone gets a little nervous when I get my whiteboard out. So they're like, what am I going to get? But it helps me to stop nagging too. But yeah, I hope that's helpful from the standpoint of, I know sometimes people just like, I'm going to take and clone what works, but you really have to figure out like, here's a bunch of different ideas. We'll try this one. If it's not working, then try something else. So, I mean, there have been times that, again, things are smooth, and other times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I read an organization. Yeah.
Back to you tips.
What did I say?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I know you mentioned in the book that kids can do more than you think they can when it comes to a chore. So how do you determine, what they can help out with and when? I know this was something we really tried with our kids when they were little, like as soon as they could carry things, carry your laundry to the laundry basket, or, put your toys in the toy box. But how do you really determine what your kids are ready for so that you can start outsourcing some of those things that they highly contribute to, like dishes and laundry and stuff like that, to them, where you don't have to do as much of that and feel like you're the housekeeper for the whole family?
Yeah. Well, it's really dependent. It's not just an age related thing. It's sometimes a child related thing. I will say when I was down with COVID, so I'm like, literally, it's like, it was after Thanksgiving. And so I'm like laying on the couch, like, ugh. And
Wow.
My 10-year-old daughter did 3 meals while I was sick, and she just took care of it. She would have like my husband maybe like do a couple of the things that, she can. I think one day I got up and I chopped the onion for the spaghetti. Like I can stand and chop. And then she did all the spaghetti. She just did it. And so I think when you do, but I've trained her on how to do that. She's been my little buddy. So it wasn't a surprise. It was a blessing. And so it was kind of neat to see all of what we've been working on come together. So when you are trying to figure out, like what can kids do, just try it out. Like I think I shared that. I think that was in the book. I can't remember if I put it in the book, but I've shared it online, where it was the moment where my 2-year-old son, and he was like an older 2, but he was 2. He threw a fit and he went in and took all of the clothes off of the hangers. And I walked in and I was like, what? I'm like, okay, we're going to learn how to hang clothes today.
Yeah, now is the time.
Yep. And we did. And I sat there with him and I handed him the hanger and I handed him the clothes. I'm like, we stick it in and we stick it in and we hang it up. And so it wasn't perfect, but it was back up. So, that's, I think, key is just like, try it out, see what they're ready for. And there's so many little things like you already mentioned, like just simple things. If they can pick something up, they can put it in a basket, and getting them just in the habit of picking up. Oh, wait, let's not move to another, toy. That looks like fun, but let's clean this up first. So helping them even from a young age develop habits is really important. But like, as far as you'd be shocked at how much your kids can do, like we start our kids really early with laundry. And so little kids can put clothes into the washer. So super easy. And I will say here that we tend to get clothes that we can just wash all on cold. Like I don't buy a lot of blacks or reds. Like that's just keeping it simple. But my girls will load because they were the youngest at the time, but they're putting things into the washing machine, and then most of the time they're wanting to help fill the soap, and then so they're helping with all the different elements, and it just kind of gets to a point where it's just like, mommy, can I do it by myself? And I mean, I've had kids as young as 5 and 6 doing their own laundry, and that's shocking, and sometimes it's a little scary. And I'm standing over them like, don't forget the soap. It's fun to have
all over the place.
I know. Well, oh gosh, knock on something. We haven't had that. We've had really, really nice rinsed clothes. And I'm like, this just smells.
Yeah.
Oh, the soap thing.
Oh no.
And I'm like, why? And the best was actually one time when like we were, somebody was needed to go and I go to grab the clothes out of the washing machine. I'm like, these feel dry. And I'm like, oh, like, let's not put dry, dirty clothes into the dryer. So,
oh yeah. On top of the clean stuff.
yeah. So I mean, like, just make a list of things you need to get done in your house. And here's my funny tip for parents. And so if you have kids in the room, like seriously, like don't let them hear this because this is my fun tip. What are your least favorite things to do? Train your kids to do them. Like trash.
I love that.
Stand it. Can't stand it. So dishes, laundry, like those are all things that it's like, those are the first things my kids learn how to do. Cause those are the things I'm like, ooh, I actually kind of find it therapeutic to wipe down my counter. Like it just kind of, I'm weird that way. It's like, it's my little thing. But I will more than happily let my kids wipe down the counter too. But, pick those first projects as things that they can have success in and that, they can do so that you don't like doing, they can do. But I referenced it earlier, but this is the biggest thing that I want to interject here a moment. And that is when you're asking kids to do chores, you have to find the right tools for them. You have to find things that are fun for them to use and easy for them to use. So we have a little wireless vacuum. That's super easy and fun. I mean, sometimes they have fought over who gets to do that, to vacuum up the crumbs. Like we think vacuum carpet, vacuum floors, like, oh my goodness, like so great. And so having someone that's part of your routine, like, boy, we sure did make a mess tonight. So who's going to, I sometimes will write sweep. I don't know why I'm still in the habit of like vacuum kitchen, like make sure you get it all up. So finding those things, microfiber cloths are great because then you can use water oftentimes, having kid-friendly, what is it, like cleaning solutions. So like I'll use Mrs. Meyer's for a lot of things and other, sometimes I use an essential oil based thing, but finding things like that are really key and the kids just love it. So yeah, there's so many fun things, but finding things that are fun for them to work with and that they're like, oh, I want to I want to do the toilets. I was going to say that. I'm like, yeah, no one said that.
Yeah. I know that was one that I tried
that I show them
a little too early, I think. And then, I was like, oh no, now I need to come back and redo the toilet. So, but you do talk about that in the book, letting go of perfection. I know I have talked to so many moms that say, oh, I would love my kids clean, but it takes so long and they don't do a good job. And then you have to redo it and all of that. But why should you not do it all for them? And I think especially if you're a homeschool parent, you're already teaching them academically. So I feel like sometimes it's a little easier to also teach them these life skills. But why is it important really to embrace the level they're at and teach them those skills?
Well, we're training them to not just be great in math. We want our kids to be well-rounded. And I think part of that is like, I want my kids to not just, I want them to love the Lord. That's my number one priority, but I want them to be great spouses and I want them to be great friends and I want them to be great parents. So I am purposely training them to do things so it's easier for them because I grew up, I was an only child with a working single mom. And so there's just some things that I learned a lot, but there's some things that it's just like, kind of learned under fire. And I didn't know what it looked like to manage a home with kids. So a lot of it was like, what? Like, I was a people pleaser. I would like tidy up and I did not tidy my room. My mom will be the first to tell you, like, it was like my room, you had to like almost step in and over things to get into it. But, I'm like, and I've learned since then why and all that kind of stuff. But you can't expect perfection from your kids. But you can expect help and for them to put in a good college try. And that's teaching work ethic, and so there's things like that we have to think big picture. Like I want them to be great roommates in college. If they choose to go off to college, I want them to be great spouses from the standpoint of like, not everything's falling on one person, like, or if somebody gets sick, like, goodness, like when I got sick, what a blessing it was that my kids could actually help out because that's stressful. It was stressful for me. Like I don't feel good. I need to lay here. It took me a long time to get better because I kept trying to get up and do things and they're like, go sit down. So that was the thing that was just like, okay, like it was great to have people who knew how to do it. And so I had heard someone say, and this might rock some people's world, And it kind of like, now I'm like, oh, do I still have that happening? But at one point I was like, all right, teaching your kids to be able to run the house by age, whatever, put it in there. This family had said by age 12. And I tell you, my two older boys, I think they pretty much could have. And I will say that my 13-year-old most likely could. And my girls, like 10 and 8, they're getting there. Like my 10-year-old, she's definitely close, but like being able to do many of the things in the home, and they've had experience with it. So you can set that goal forever, but like, again,
I love that. Now I want to like test my children and see like what can you do.
Yeah. So again, think big picture with that one. It is important for them to know how to do things. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's not uncommon for homeschool parents to try to do it all, right? We're already teaching our kid, like we're trying to do it all. But you have said several times today, like give yourself grace. And one of the ways you can do that is asking others for help. So I know, of course, you can hire outside help, but what if you don't have that in your budget, or, what are some inexpensive or free solutions maybe for getting the help you need in running your home and homeschooling and doing all the things you're trying to do?
Yeah. So, kids sounds funny, kid swaps, but, talking to a girlfriend and asking, can my kids hang out with you for like 2 hours so I can work on a project or clean something or, do whatever or breathe, finish a thought. And then, hey, I'll watch your kids on this day. And so just, switching off, because sometimes it's helpful to like get the kids out of the house so that you can actually focus and get work done. There's also, that can even just be with your spouse. Like, please take the children for the afternoon. Like take them out of the house.
Yeah.
I know. And even if it's so you can soak in a bath and no one's going to be pounding on the door, that's okay. But that's one solution. You can obviously, we are really big on, we don't do it as much now, but for a long time, so my husband traveled. So I really didn't have the normal help from even a spouse coming home at the end of the night. Like, okay, end of the night, still me. I was really big on it, making sure we instituted quiet time. So that's when the babies would nap. That's when, and sometimes I'm like, just stay in your room, read, play, whatever, just you'll come out. Like, and sometimes I would let them be in the room. Didn't have to be in the room, but just having that quiet time where it can be time when you can get other things done. So finding help in that way is important, but a big thing is like you reference asking for help. And one of the stories I share in my Sanity Savers for Moms book always really hits home as a great reminder of that. We had just had our 4th and I was at a co-op and we had like this prayer time for the moms. And I was like, so overwhelmed. Steve was traveling so much and I had this new baby, these 3 younger kids. I'm trying to homeschool and I'm like, whoa. And it was crazy. And so I'm like, I know, I'll just ask for prayer. And like, I didn't even make it very far. And I'm like bawling, like, I don't have it all together. I need help. And afterwards, my girlfriend was so sweet because she's just like, you know what? My daughter's saving up for a ballet camp. And she's like, maybe just pay her a few bucks and we can come over. She's like, where do you live? We lived 3 minutes away and I had no idea.
Wow.
And so it was one of those amazing God moments. If I hadn't reached out and asked for help, I never would have known that I had a teen helper, a mom's helper who was just such a blessing to us for that season, who was super close. And, again, she's a teen helper. So it's not like I'm paying her like as much as I would pay cleaners to come in. So I didn't have to pay her a lot. And she was so great. There was days where I would have her do projects in the house and I would play with the kids. Cause sometimes at one point I'm like, no, I want to have fun. Like,
yeah, you don't want to be doing all the behind the scenes.
I want to go play outside. It was spectacular. If I hadn't asked, I never would have gotten that blessing. And she was able to say it was like a win-win. And so it was just such a blessing for that season. And once Valley Camp was over, it was very sad.
Yeah. Don't you have anything else you want to do?
I know. No, that is the hardest of like your teen helpers go on with life. I'm like, no.
I remember my own mom saying that when our babysitters would go off to college and move away, and then it was like, oh no, I need to find someone else. But you
Yeah.
mentioned something that reminded me. I know my daughter, now that she's in middle school, as a homeschooled kid, she is always looking for, who has a toddler in the neighborhood that I can watch, or, so yeah, definitely tap into your other homeschool families where they have older kids, because they're probably looking to earn some money and they're not old enough to get a real job yet. And so I know that is definitely something she's always like, whose child can I watch?
Yes. Oh, yes.
So, yeah,
I always have my eye out for like older daughters and like,
yeah.
and I'm like, I know you're not going to school. You can like go
exactly. Like you're done with school early and then you can come help another mom. But yeah, what you said about not being afraid to ask, I think sometimes, that's the hardest part. And then once you bring it up, you'll find that you do have people in your network that are willing to help you.
Oh, yeah.
And then I wanted to briefly touch on something you mentioned in the book about using your five senses to add joy to your home.
Yeah.
And I know that's the way we teach creative writing too, right? We think and experience the world with our senses. And so often we're so focused on the to-do list that we don't make it fun or make it beautiful. So what are some simple solutions, using those five senses to help you create your either dream homeschool space or atmosphere in your home where it really is a good multi-purpose space that you enjoy being in when you're not doing school too?
Yeah, well, I love that one. I'm like smile extra big when you said, I'm like, I love talking
All
about
the
this.
pretty things.
Oh my goodness, like cozy blankets. Like right now it's colder. Like, I'm a San Diego, so I'm like colder.
Not as cold as it is here.
how actually warm it is compared to other places. But it's a sweater, like so sweater weather, blanket weather, but cozy blankets in a nook, maybe with some nice soft lighting. Lighting actually is really important for learning. Fluorescent light bulbs, they shouldn't have no place. Like, if you have like, not that you're going to be like, they're in our garages and our laundry rooms and sometimes bathrooms and stuff, like that's actually really disruptive for our brains. So switching those out is important, but getting soft lamps or beware of candles. I love candles I have had a candle over here at one point. I love candles, but they scare me half to death because I'm like, no, like, but we will have candles like on the table. So, and then that creates a smell, but like oftentimes I buy candles and we just don't light them and I keep the lid off, or, I just keep them open because it's creating that beautiful smell. You can run a diffuser. You can bake cookies so the kids can like, oh, when we're done with this work, we get to have, and I will tell you, food is an awesome motivator. So it's fun. Food and fun are great for motivating kids. But, adding color and life into a room. So visually stimulating touch, like I said, it's cozy blankets, the scent. So what, just trying to, and it's fun to get creative. Like, what am I missing? I'm like, taste. Okay. So, snacks, making sure you have healthy snacks on hand. And just because I'm big on feed the brain. So you got to make sure you're feeding those kiddo brains because they're working. And so it's really important to understand, like, the omegas they need, the protein they need, getting lots of water. We keep water bottles on now we're downstairs and the water's just on the table, but we used to keep water bottles on everybody's desk. And so, that's taste and what I'm missing. Touch, taste, I think I had to hit them all. I'm like,
I think so. Yeah, we've got the cozy blanket.
So I give examples in the book. And I'm like, what are all the ones? 6 cents. What's that? Like, woo. But yeah, so just kind of creating an environment where it's just like, there's something wonderful and enriching about that. Because I think kids, it also imprints their brain. They'll remember that picture. They'll remember that warm feeling. And it's like, I mean, how often have you walked by something that smells good? And I'm like, oh, I remember my grandma. And like, like I forget what it was. There's like, I was with my grandma when we made bread, it's like, I remember that scent, or just it can be so many things, but you're helping to actually imprint memories. And in school, that's important, that you're imprinting as well, because you can actually remember things. So if you incorporate, so that's in homeschool basics, we talk about the same thing, incorporating your senses into teaching your kids, because, oh my goodness, that is going to cement facts into their brains that they need, and scripture too. So you can do all kinds of different fun things using the senses.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Christy, thank you so much. We've talked about a little bit about your different books. You also have your HOME Home Organization Made Easy Masterclass and your website, KristiClover.com. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and then what you would like to give away to some of our viewers today?
I know when you're asking me giveaways, I'm like, I don't know, like so many fun things.
You do, yeah.
Well, last January, actually it was kind of January, February, I did, I called it based off the book, an M.O.M, so Master Organizer of Mayhem challenge. And so it was a 5-day challenge that we did. And I went through the 5 pillars of home organization and that. And I decided that not everybody, as much as I wish I was like Joanna and I could say M.O.M and everybody knows that it's home organization. I was like, well, we should probably make it more home-based. So I decided to create take a lot of what we did in the challenge and put it all in one spot. And we're making it a masterclass. I have several people signed up to come on. We're going to be doing interviews and be asking them their hacks. And these are some of the experts in the field of home organization and home that are going to be coming on. So that I'm really excited for the way it's kind of shaping up. So it's already there. You can get all the stuff from the challenge and all of my bonus materials that we have mentors coming in that are going to be coming into the class as well. So that's the HOME, Home Organization Made Easy. Yes, I love my acronyms. So that's the masterclass. And then I've got several books that are really fun and helpful for families. So M.O.M, Master Organizer of Mayhem, Homeschool Basics. And I have a freebie, Sanity Savers for Moms. That's actually getting updated and people will find out about the update for my newsletter. So if you go to KristiClover.com/join, you can find out information about my newsletter and all that stuff. And that's usually where I share with people. But as far as the giveaway, I'm going to give away a few copies of M.O.M. I can give away some Homeschool Basics, and I'll do one membership to the Home Organization Made Easy, and I'll give 2 of the Ultimate Homeschool Organization course because I really think that is going to be what will knock your socks off if you really are looking for help. And what's been fun is I've had the course out for 5 or 6 years now, and so when I speak at homeschool organization or homeschool conventions, what's been such a blessing is getting to hear the stories that come. So people coming over, I've had people whose husband was deployed and they're like, I was ready to quit, but it helped me to actually get systems in. And it was, my husband travels, but that's nothing compared to a husband deployed. So, and we're in San Diego, so we have a lot of military families, but it's been really neat to see how just helping people be really specific on how they create systems and how that just completely changes their homeschool. So we'll do 2 of those. So hopefully that'll be fun for everybody. So make sure
I'm excited.
However you're doing the giveaway, you will give them all the information, but those are some of the things that will be given away.
That is so exciting. Yeah. And Christy, thank you so much for being here and helping our homeschool families with your system and tips. I know I loved the M.O.M, Master Organizer of Mayhem book because it's so relatable. For anyone who has not read it yet, talking to you is very similar to reading it. Like I hear your voice in reading it. It's easy to read and easy to start implementing those systems right away. And I love how your focus is really on customizing it for your families. So you don't have to do everything verbatim, following what works for you guys. So that is great. Yeah. And as you mentioned, everybody wanting to check out your resources should definitely head over to your website, KristiClover.com. You can also tune into your Simply Joyful podcast as well. So Christy, thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is really fun.